Hey guys, today we are in 1 Samuel chapter 24. And in 1 Samuel 24, Saul puts together this army of 3,000 elite professional soldiers. These guys are hardened fighting machines, and they are hunting down David. They are hunting down David with one goal, just to kill him, just to wipe him out. Now Saul, as they go along, he goes into this cave to relieve himself. Okay, he goes into a cave to use the bathroom. And he goes in there thinking that he's all alone. But unbeknownst to him, David and his men are in the same cave. David's hiding out in the same cave that Saul just happens to show up in. Da-da-da-da! And here Saul is, just inches away from David. Saul has no clue. He doesn't know that he's not by himself. And David's right there. And David's men are like, hey, this is it. This is your chance. It's payback time. This is your chance to just kill the king. He's been out to get you. He's been trying to kill you. Now your chance is here to get back at him. Okay, and it would be self-defense. I mean, after all, everybody knows he's trying to kill you. So just strike out. Now's the time. We're pretty sure God has put him in your hands, so just go for it. But David refuses to do that. David refuses to hurt the king. And he sneaks up on him, and he cuts off a piece of Saul's robe without Saul knowing. But immediately, David feels guilty, because he feels like he's disrespected the king. He's brought shame upon the king. And he's like, how could I even think about assaulting the anointed? How could I even think about hurting the one that God has chosen? And because Saul has been appointed by God, David respects him as the anointed of God. Because, let me repeat that. Because Saul has been appointed by God, David respects him as the anointed of God. Now, that doesn't mean that Saul was approved by God. Doesn't mean that what he was doing or who he was had God's stamp of approval. We need to respect authority unless they're trying to force us to violate God's law. That's the ultimate authority. In Romans 13:1, it says this: everyone must submit to governing authority, for all authority comes from God, and those in position of authority have been placed there by God. A lot of times we're not going to understand authority. A lot of times we're not going to be getting our way. But it's only submission if we don't get our way. Okay? It's only submission if we're not being told to do something that we don't want to. Now, unless they're telling us to do something that directly violates God's law and God's authority, we need to submit. So here's David, and he's refusing to hurt the king. And it has more to do with David's attitude towards God than really to do with Saul. David has ultimate respect for God. And because of that, it causes him to respect anything that God has touched. Okay, it's like a respect residue. He has this respect residue for Saul because God has once touched him. God has anointed and appointed him. And because of that, David respects him. And because of that, David refused to take destiny into his own hands. And he determined to be loyal to the king until God tells him different, even though the king's out to get him. We need to do the same thing. We need to realize we need to have ultimate respect for God. And that affects the way we view everybody else and everything else. We respect others because they have been touched by God. They have been created by God. So we can respect them. Okay, even when it doesn't make sense. Now, in our story, Saul repents, and Saul sees the error of his ways, and he's like, okay, let's take a little time out. I'm not going to kill you anymore. That's not going to last for long. And David goes off, and it's an incredible story. So much to learn in this chunky little chapter. God bless you guys. Giddy up.